Hello and welcome to another Overlord lore video, and today we are going to take a look at the question whether or not Emperor Jircniv could have actually defeated the kingdom, or if the empire would have lost eventually, and then corrupted and undermined by the structures of the syndicate known as the Eight Fingers. But before we are going to take a look at this question, let's take a look at my Patreons and thank them for supporting this channel, as well as all users of the YouTube thanks function who made one-time donations. Now with that said, let me quickly draw up a basic scenario. Let's say Ainz had been transported to another part of the New World, instead of the border region between kingdom and empire, so that his forces can't interfere. Also no other player will have been brought into this area, so that only the forces of the New World are left to contend with one another, or rather the human forces. And without Ainz Ooal Gown's timely interference, the Sunlight Scripture disguised as the Imperial Knights would have succeeded in killing not only Jircniv, but also the king's own warrior troop, made up of seasoned, battle-hardened veterans, wielding all of their own unique equipment. And without Jircniv and his warrior elite, not only would have the royal faction at court been demoralized, but the noble faction emboldened. And if they managed to take the 5 treasures of the kingdom from Jircniv, which can't be a coincidence, then they could very well be in a strong enough position after Jircniv has died to risk an attack. And at this point the empire would contact the mole inside of the royal faction, as well as the great nobles, and make a quite interesting proposition. The empire at the annual Battle of the Cat's Plain will attack together with the forces of the aristocrats, and then finish off the already weakened royal faction. As soon as the royalists get attacked by the legions of Baharut, and thereby are pinned down into place, the warriors of the great nobles would stab them in the back and attack the rear. Thus the entire royal faction, including the king, gets eliminated. Minus the mole, of course, because he will, just as the rest of the great nobles, have been slaughtered when the empire sounds another charge and destroys the already exhausted peasant levies of the great nobles in another surprise backstab. With the losses of the overwhelming majority of the kingdom's forces and the economy of re-estize already in deep crisis, there will be little hope that the forces of the empire, with the support of Fluda and his elite casters, could be stopped. Hence why Raven, who pretended to stay in the city of Irantel due to some private issues, let's call it health, would just open the gates in exchange for his life, his position, and of course the lives of his family. And unlike in the field, Jircniv will likely uphold this pact, since the Marquis is really competent not only at politics but also at managing his own lands and villages. And the Marquis will also serve as an important ally after the kingdom of re-estize has been conquered and the land made into or rather several provinces of the empire. And since the kingdom used to be even more feudal than the empire, will also secure their lands, their holdings, and their armies. After Irantel had been taken, there might even be a token force sent to retake the city, but with the recent loss of an entire army, likely numbering more than 200,000 men, morale would be abysmal, and after a brief attempt at retaking Irantel, the kingdom's second army would also yield due to overwhelming advantage that the empire has. After that, and after the domain of Marquis Raven, Libera would officially ally with him, and in this case Jircniv, it is likely that other minor nobles who thus far have tried to stay neutral would also join the faction Marquis Raven would create. The kingdom would thus lose even more support, and since the population would be far too exhausted to continue the fight, this might be the point where negotiations about the conditions of the surrender would commence. Jircniv would likely want to ensure that the royal family gets destroyed, but being the smart ruler that he is, he will at the very least keep Renna around, due to her reputation as the Golden Princess. If Renna would publicly declare herself an imperial loyalist, most of the population would likely accept their new overlord. Renna in turn could offer Jircniv to marry a commoner, let's say Climb, in order to ensure that she couldn't produce a legitimate heir to the throne. And with a smile on her lips and a chain in hand, she will then immediately make good on her part of the deal by visiting her guardian in his chamber. The then creeped out emperor will likely go to her ideas and plans of Renna to improve the kingdom, and after going through an ungodly amount of really unholy descriptions Renna left behind, containing more private than public affairs, Jircniv will implement a bunch of really well thought out reforms, and thus create more prosperity for nobles and commoners alike, thus legitimizing his rule in the eyes of the people. So in conclusion, I believe that Jircniv would be able to conquer the kingdom of re-estize, since the loss of Gazav Stronov and the deep infiltration of the royal court would allow him to facilitate a devastating defeat within the first day of the war. And since the kingdom had been far too exhausted from the economic strain the annual wars had put onto the nation to fight back in any meaningful way, Jircniv would win. And after conquering the kingdom, the empire and especially the emperor would have another and likely far more potent enemy to fight: the Eight Fingers. And if the empire could win, or if it's doomed to fall into corruption and disrepair, will be the topic of the next video. And at the very end of this video, I will do a little comment section review, where I go to your comments and comment them. Mainly those which are about Overlord, of course. And the two comments I'm going to focus on for today were posted under my last video, which answers the question why Emperor Jircniv has so many women. Now, Billy the Stormtrooper and Onkogni both agreed that Jircniv, despite being emperor, is also just a young man and had other reasons for getting himself a dozen or so girlfriends. And while the emperor will likely have enjoyed their company, he most certainly didn't get married to any of them, because otherwise the woman would become empress, and Jircniv's sons legitimate heirs with a claim to the imperial throne. But since his plan had always been to produce as many kids as he could, and then pick the smartest to legitimize it, he definitely isn't married. And again, while Jircniv is quite popular due to his looks and his status and his full hair, he also had produced this many kids out of a sense of duty to his empire and to secure his line. And also it has to be said that he doesn't have thousands or hundreds of thousands of women. I mean, even his stamina is limited. But this might change in the future, thanks to the potion of Inferior. And with that said, I say thank you very much for watching, and special thanks to Ben C, Chrissy, Crowley0221, Sia, Death is Mercy, Deathless Dragonlord, Dystopia, Dystopia II, Feral Shivan, Guy with That Head, Hector Marino, Hoss, Huster, Jacob G, Jana B, Jason, Chromius, Legendarius, Lelouch Britannia with a Mustache, Lexus Fox, Lord Nishikian Rai, Lord Touch Me, Merovec, Mr. Shoes, Mr. Tweaker, Michael R, Michael Y, Oakhill, Overlord General Gasper, Paddy Pantum, Personage, Primus 11, Shadow Lightning Wolf, Shrine Keeper, Texas Deer, the Orc Warboss, Rocket Smasher, T.E. Wang, Vash Hawkeye, Vegito 27, Venture Fanatic, Wilhelm, and Zonagon. Thanks guys. Anyway, have a nice day, and I hope to see you all again soon on my next video.